Everyone's in. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Really brilliant to see you all here this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, a huge thank you to Sergio for joining us all the way from Italy. Absolutely thrilled that you actually said yes to giving us a presentation today. I have known of you for so long, and I've had the pleasure of meeting you on a couple of occasions. And Sergio is an absolute legend within the veterinary sled dog world. He's been involved in the sport for so many years and has just been such a driving force in making sure the welfare of the dogs always comes actually first and is paramount. So I am so excited that he has agreed to come and chat to us this evening and just to do a presentation for us. So I am actually going to stop talking very quickly because I think Sergio has got some amazing things to share with us. And if anyone's got any questions, if you want to type them in, and we can come to those at the end, if Sergio doesn't mind, that would be absolutely brilliant. If you've got anything that you'd like to say on the way through, you know, just type them in and we'll pick those up later. But thank you very much indeed for joining us. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over. So welcome, Sergio. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. First of all, I have to apologize for my English, which is not perfect, of course. And maybe I have also to apologize for winning the European Soccer Championship in Italy against England, but that's the thing. So first of all, I want to give some suggestion from a vet about working dog in harness. Actually, it's many years that I've been following this kind of sport on snow and dryland. So I've seen that this word is very different. Is very everybody has a different view about the dog in harness. But as you said, the most important part is the wellness of a dog. I think that keeping dog in a good shape, in good health, and preserving her wellness, it's the absolutely the thing that will make the race go on in perfect way, and this will be the way that everybody will have a happy dog and will finish the race and the career of a dog in a happy way. So what I want to say is that many times I meet people that want to take part to sled dog race or to dryland race. And my first question to them when they ask me, when they tell me that they want to start a career in this kind of sport, my first question usually is, which is your target? And we will see later which kind of answer I have usually. The second question I usually put is, do you really know your dog? Do you know which kind of dog you have and how are the characteristics of your dog? And the third question usually is, of course, do you have time for it? Because this is really a time requesting a kind of activity. So let's see which is your target. When I ask to the musher or to the competitor that want to enter this kind of activity, the first answer they give me is, I want to give my dog something to do. And of course, this is not enough, because it's not just doing something for the dog, but is doing it in the proper way. Another answer maybe it's, I want to keep my dog happy, healthy, and fit. And this is already a better point of view, because of course doing sport just like humans do is the best way to have a healthy and fit condition and be happy. Remember that there is a study that showed that running for people as well as for animals is the best way to put in the blood some substances that relax the dog or that relax the human. So running is a way to have a dog very happy, if it's done in the proper way, of course. Another answer is I want to compete at the local level. And this is good because, of course, when people start running with dogs, many time there's a sort of competition with your friend, with your neighborhood, with other people, and usually you start at local level, of course. And this can be very interesting because if you start with such a target, you will probably need many help from the veterinarians, from the organizers, and you will be able also to take part in the organization of this competition. So it's a good way to start your career with a sled dog or a dryland dog. Then maybe growing up a little bit, you will understand that you have a good dog, that you are quite fit, and you want to start to compete in national and international level. And this is, of course, very interesting because it's a sort of competition that require many attitude, many good time to put in. So it's can be difficult, but it's really rewarding to reach a national or even an international level. Some people answer me, I want to compete and I want to win. Well, I'm a bit afraid of these people because sometimes they just put the winning side overall, and this is not the best way to be interested in this kind of sport, especially because sometimes who has a win-win predisposition doesn't look really at the health and welfare of the dog. Then there is some people that want to run fast and people that want to run long. This is very different. Of course, sprint races are much more funny sometimes, we can say, while long distance races are more time requiring and very difficult to reach the finish line. So be aware that the target are very different and the dog you have to run are very different actually. And so when I have this kind of answer, sometimes I just put some other question like, but do you love snow and cold weather? Because remember that if you want to run in sled dog competition, of course, cold weather, especially up in the north in Scandinavia, can be really, really cold. You can reach temperatures that are lower than minus 30. So that's a point that you have to consider before trying to enter in this kind of sport. Or on the opposite, maybe you love mud and rainy weather. So maybe dryland race is much more for you. It's not always like running in good weather with the sun shining, maybe not too hot, of course, but many time running in dryland, it's a mud and rainy matter. So remember that if you want to compete in dryland, you will have also to face this kind of condition. And finally, as I said again, do you want to run fast or want to run long? These are very different conditions in this kind of sports. So the second part I always ask to the people who enter in this kind of competition is, do you really know your dog? First of all, consider that not all the breed have the same attitude. Of course, there are hunting dogs that can be turned into sled dog, or a dog that usually like to run, but can be good sled dog or dryland dog. But not all the breed have a proper attitude for this sport. And even not all the dogs have the right temperament. Some are too aggressive, some are too shy, so not all of them can really be a good companion if you want to run with them. It can be very difficult to train and to, if you want to put them on the harness, can be very difficult for you. So be sure about having a good dog and to choose the proper dog for this kind of activity. And two other points that you have to know very well is about the pedigree and genealogy of the dogs, because of course the best dog that can run have usually a pedigree and a genealogy that goes back to the ancestors in the same kind of activity. I mean, usually a show dog is difficult to turn him in a good competition dog. So the pedigree is very important, as well as the genealogy for the dog, for the kind of breed that do not have a real pedigree, a real registered pedigree. I'm talking about Alaskan Husky, for example. You don't have a real registration, but many times when you have a new Alaskan Husky, you will know who is the father, who is the mother, the grandfather, and so on. So you will have to learn which good genealogy you have to look for to have a good dog for running in these sports. And to know very well your dog, also you have to think about sex and age. Of course, the different sex have different, sometimes have different attitude. Of course, they have different qualities. Many times females are very intelligent, much more than some males, I would say. And sometimes, of course, female have the problem of going into heat. But in my experience, I've seen also many female that are neuters, that are spayed, and they run as well as a untouched female dog. So sex is important, but it's not so important. And finally, of course, age, because if you want to start in this activity, you have probably to start with young dogs, with dogs that you will grow up by yourself and with the help of many people around in this world. But remember that age is one of the most important points in choosing the dog, and you have to know very well which are the pros and the cons of young dogs and adult dogs. So three other points that you have to know about your dog is first of all the individual conformation. So remember that a dog can have a different type of muscle. Later we will see what I'm talking about. Different tone and volume of a muscle. You have to know what angulation and range of motion is, because having a good angulation, it puts the dog in a better position to run in the proper way and in the better way, let's say. It will give a better results if the dog have good angulation. And you have to know about the individual conformation on the skeletal point of view. That means radiology, especially some joints like hip, knee, shoulder, and elbow are very important. It's very important to have a check with your vet on the condition of the hip and knee, shoulder, and elbow, because these big joints are the joints that are most stressed during running, that are most stressing during activity. So having a good conformation of these joints is very, very important. So a second point, when you think about discussing with a vet who will ask you if you know your dog, is having some info from a basic health check. A usual veterinary visits will give you a first impression about the health of your dog if you want to run with that dog. But it's the most important part is a check about the athletic condition. And a pre-check before starting the activity, as well as before starting every competition, if you are in a competition, a good check is made through 3 points, which are blood exams, a general blood exam. So if you give attention, if you pay attention to red cells and hemoglobin, which are very important to transport the oxygen to the muscle, or blood exams that are interested in kidney and liver to understand how good is the function of these big organs, and blood exams that are dealing with some values that are connected to the muscle activity. There are few values, but few kind of investigation that can help you in understand the muscle condition of the dog. And if you do this kind of check before starting the athletic activity or before starting a very important competition, you will probably understand if you have good option to finish in a better way or not. And another very important condition you have to check is the heart investigation, which is done, of course, by ultrasound from a vet, and usually vets that are interested in heart activity can make a very good investigation on the activity of the heart before the sport activity, to understand how good the heart is, if there is any kind of problem or not. So just to be sure that you are going to run with a dog in a perfect fit condition, be sure to have a heart investigation on him. And finally, 2 points that are very easy to check. You don't need to be a veterinarian to check on BCS and hydration. BCS, BCS is very important. That means body condition score, as well. Hydration is very important, and later we will have a little bit of talk about it. I was talking about muscle type and muscle volume as an individual conformation point. It's very important to understand that the muscle type, the kind of muscle your dog has, is determined by genetics, and the fiber of a muscle and the metabolism of this muscle are usually not easy to change in a dog, not even with a good training plan. So remember that genetic is very important when you choose to run a sled dog or a dryland dog. The fiber muscle are mainly of 3 types, and well, this is a bit of anatomy and physiology, but just to put it in a very easy way, we have 3 kind of fibers in the muscle. The red fibers, which are very good for running long distance. And these fibers are very slow in contraction, and they use a lot of oxygen. They have an aerobic metabolism. And these kind of fibers are very good in burning fats. They take the energy they need from fats. So remember that for running long distance, the quantity of fat in the diet is very important. Then we have an intermediate white fibers, which are not so important, but are interesting because you can change the activity of these intermediate fibers towards red or white activity. That means that they can burn better, in a better way, fats or burn in a better way sugars. And this is typical of a third kind of fibers, with 2B fibers, white fibers, which are very fast in contraction, which have a metabolism that doesn't need that much oxygen, and which are very good in burning sugars. And these fibers are really typical of the dogs that have very fast muscles. Let's say that, I'm sorry, this is in Italian, but it's quite easy to understand. On the left, we have the sprinter, the human sprinter, but it's the same with a dog sprinter. And as you can see, the red fiber are very small in percentage, in quantity. So this sprinter do not have many fibers in their muscles that work mainly with oxygen. Not so many fibers that are slow in contraction. They have most of their muscle fiber as white fibers, as you can see. Then if you go towards the right hand, where is the endurance, you will see that the red fibers in the muscle are more and more higher in quantity, and the marathon runners or ultra marathon runners, like our dogs do in long distance races, these dogs have a lot of red fibers. They burn a lot of fat, they burn a lot of oxygen, and do not run, of course, as fast as a sprinter. And this is really uh, the same in the dog. You will see that the difference from greyhound to foxhound is really a difference between a dog which is very fast and a dog that can run maybe all day long hunting. So as you can see, different muscles have also different quantity of fast fiber. Greyhound goes from 96% to 88% of fast white fibers. On the opposite, the foxhound doesn't have more than 60 to 70, sometimes in some muscle even 80, but usually lower than 70% of white fibers. So these dogs are good for running long, maybe not so sprinting, but good for running all day long, just like our long distance dog do in a long distance competition. Remember that our long distance competition are sometimes longer than 1,000 kilometers, like Finnmarksloppet in Norway, which is 1,200 kilometers, or like Iditarod or Yukon Quest, which are more than 1,500 kilometers. So you will never put a pure greyhound in this competition. You will put probably something that has the ability to run longer with oxygen, with fat, and those kind of dogs are usually more Nordic dogs, because these Nordic dogs have been selected to have the ability to run longer in colder weather. So this is one of the most important difference between a sprinter and long distance. Then another point I was talking about was which are the 2 points that you have to know about your own dog. The first point is body condition score. You don't need, as I said, to be a vet to understand body condition score. Maybe your vet will help you the first time in understanding the body condition score of your dog. And I'm happy to say that we are doing a study on body condition score here with some colleagues. And we are comparing the way we evaluate body condition score with the way the musher evaluate the body condition score of their own dogs. And we have seen that many musher knows their dog very well, and our evaluation is exactly the same as their evaluation. So be aware that knowing your dog is one of the best way to understand how he's fit to run and how he's ready to run. Body condition score means evaluating how much fat your dog has. Of course, you will never run a dog who is overweight or even obese. Maybe it will be easier to run a dog that is a little bit thin, because he doesn't need too much weight to be carried around. And the point where you go and touch and look at the dog to understand how much fat is on that dog are these in different points. You have the red in front, which is the scapula spine. You have to feel touching the dog without pressing, and feeling the bone under the skin. Maybe I would say without seeing it. If you see the bone prominence, it will be too thin. If you have to press on the bone, on the fat to feel the bone, that dog will be probably too fat to run. The other points very important are the ribs in blue, in the light blue. On the rib cage, you have to feel it without pressing and not seeing too much. The same is on the dorsal line of a vertebra in the dark blue. The same is in green on the lower part of the chest. And finally, the same is on the hip and the and the lower part of the sacrum. On all those points, you have to look at it, to look at them, I mean, and to touch without pressing and feeling the bones. If you need more info, there is from ISDVMA this good chart with good guidelines, which is published on the net. On the bottom, you see the address, the internet address of it. And there is all the evaluation from 1 to 9, because the way we evaluate body condition has a scale that goes from 1 to 9. And the ideal way, and the ideal evaluation is, I would say, 4, 5, or 6. Let's say that 4 is very good for sprint, because, as I said, you don't have to bring all that fat around to run in a sprint race. You will run, of course, on fat, but especially in the initial part of a competition, where you will run also on sugar. So you don't need too much fat coverage on the body of your dog if you run a sprint. On the opposite, going up in the value in the evaluation of 5 and 6, those are dogs that are very good in middle and in long distance races. They will need more fat before the start, because especially in long distance, and especially if you run sled dog in the cold, the dog will need a lot of energy, and the only way to have energy is burning his fat and having some food with fat, high percentage of fat. But if in a very long distance race, it can be very difficult to put food enough in your dog to keep the weight. So if you start with a dog that is a little bit fat, he will be able to finish the race without losing too much fat. He will, of course, burn his reserve fat. He will burn the food you're giving him, but he will not finish the race in a free condition, or even in a number 2 condition, because, of course, in a number 2 condition, that will not permit the dog to run and go ahead in a race, because that dog is really too thin to continue.
Sergio, we have, can I just ask, we have a lot of people on here which do the monosports. So we have a lot of people that do Canicross and do their dogs over, and they like to go and do ultras with their dogs, marathon distance, half marathon distances. So we have a lot of people on here do mono. Do you, a lot of questions that always comes up on our feeds for this is, you know, should I be feeding my dog if I'm doing, at what distance should I be feeding my dogs? And you're saying about what they're burning. Have you got any suggestions of what kind of nutrition that maybe they should be carrying with them for their dogs? So if you're doing, obviously, if we're doing sprint, if we're doing our, you know, dry land, so a lot of us just do 5, 6, 7K. But as soon as you start, what distance would you start to think that people should think about nutrition when they're competing, if they're doing monosports, say Canicross?
Yeah, I understand. Actually, it can sound strange, but doing a sprint race really doesn't need that much energy, different from having the dog in a normal training, or even in a normal kind of life. I mean, running a 5K for a dog doesn't need that much reserve fat. So correctly, they do not have to give too much food to the dog. Of course, we are not talking about giving the food on the day of a competition. The day of competition, the dog can even run empty stomach, and it should be better to run empty stomach for sprint dog. On the opposite, when you run a middle distance and you start maybe up from 20, 30K, then the metabolism of the dog will for sure need a lot of fat, and maybe going up to 20-30% of fat in the food would be nice. And of course, again, you don't have to adjust the quantity of fat just on the last day of before the competition. You have to make the dog with a sort of habit to have a little by little much more fat than usual in order to keep the reserve dog in a good condition before the start. And at the end of a long distance, not at the end, but if you turn to long distance, you will need a lot of fat, a lot of protein, of course, too. So you will go up to 34, even 40% of fat and more than 20-30% of protein. And consider that these dogs do not really run on empty stomach. They have a light food, maybe a light meal before we start, but what they do in long distance usually is every couple of hours of running is to stop the dog, give them some snacks high in fat and high in protein, and this will keep the bit of energy in the dog while running. It will not just burn out all his reserve fat. So different from a sprint and middle distance, for sure, long distance will need a continuous refilling of a tank, of an energy tank the dog has. I think this is the answer. Maybe I don't know if I answer your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's because our group, we have a lot of monosport. So we have a lot of people that do bike, scooter and canicross. But of course, the canicross, we do a lot of different distances. So it's really interesting to hear that, you know, whether we should be, if people are doing ultras or marathons with their dogs, whether they should be stopping to snack them and what they should feed. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, another point I would like to stress on the difference between a sprint and long distance is that actually, as I said, a little bit of sugar for the sprinting dog is useful, but is not to be given before the race, but in the half an hour after the stage, after the race. Because if you give some kind of sugar, especially honey, let's say, if you want to keep it simple, honey in the half an hour after the stop of a sprint race, that will help the dog to refill better his tank, let's say, and especially if the sprint dog has to run a second stage the day after, or maybe some hour after. If you give him a bit of sugar immediately after the stop, that will be very useful. And this is not so useful, not so used in long distance, on the opposite, because they do not need that much sugar, they need much more fat, as I said. Okay?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's fascinating. Thank you.
Then another point very important when you want to tell me that you know your dog. If you know your dog, you have to be able to evaluate hydration condition in your dog. Consider that in a dog that maybe lose 10% of his fat reserve, maybe that dog, of course, will look skinny, will maybe not be able to finish the race, especially because we as veterinarians will have to stop a dog that has lost so much weight. But that dog will be able to recover, will be able with a good meal, with some good food to fully go back to his body condition. But on the opposite, if you lose 10% of the water in your dog, that dog will be really in a life-threatening situation, in a life-threatening condition. It seems impossible, but just 10% of water can kill it. Losing 10% of water can kill a dog, while losing 10% of weight will never kill a dog. Consider that water is the most important part in the feeding of a dog. Because most of the body is made of water, and water is very important to keep the right temperature, to move all the substances with the blood to the muscle and so on. So hydration condition is very important, and to evaluate is one of the things that can make your dog run better. When you want to evaluate the hydration condition of your dog, there are mainly 4 ways. Again, you don't need to be a vet to evaluate a hydration condition. The first one up corner on the left is the evaluation of a plica. When you take a part of a skin and you put it in a sort of how do you say, you put it up, it will have to go down immediately. It will have this plica, this fold will have to go down in the initial position immediately. That means that the hydration is very good. If it's very slow, if it's slower and then slower and slower, and at the end the plica stays up, that's an index of a very bad hydration condition. And this is very easy to do. It's very easy to do it in the proper way, especially if you do it not on the harness, not under the harness. Take another point in the the body of the dog, maybe near the head, and see how the plica is fast to go back. Another point on the bottom of that, on the left side, is pressing your finger on the mucosa of a gum, of a mouth. And you will see that if you keep it pressed for a while, a couple of seconds, and then you take it away, you will see that the mucosa turns to white, but it has to bring back the original color, the pink original color, in less than 2 seconds. And I will even say in less than 1 second if the dog is very well hydrated. If it takes longer than 2 seconds to go back to a pink color, that it's an index of bad hydration condition. The same when you touch the mucosa, the gums on the bottom right side. When you touch the gum in this picture, you have to feel a very good fluid sensation. It doesn't have to be stitchy or dry. If it's dry, of course, that's an index of a bad dehydration, of bad hydration condition, of dehydration, let's say. And finally, on the top, if you put your hand on the inner part of the leg, maybe your veterinarian will help you in doing this the first time, you will be able to feel the pulse and the pulsing of a vessel. And if you count them, you will understand in a minute, you will understand how fast is the heart beating. And consider that at rest, usually a dog can have a beat that depending on the subject, depending on the size of the dog, but usually it will go from 50 to 80, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less beat per minute. If the dog is dehydrated, but not only for that reason, of course, also a dog that has just finished to run, or a dog that has some pain condition, in this situation, as well as in dehydration, the pulse will turn higher and higher, even up to 150 or even 200 beats per minute, which is almost impossible to be counted. And consider that a dog that is dehydrated will keep this high pulse even if you let him rest. So when the dog stops running, you will feel a very high pulse. But if after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the pulse is still high, there is something that is not good. Can be dehydration, can be pulse, high pulse for pain, can be even a heart disease. But if you are able to feel the dog, to feel the pulse when the dog is resting, and you compare it with the dog in activity, after the activity, you will be able to understand what is good and what is not good in the condition of the dog. At least a first alarm that can give you the idea of bringing the dog to the vet. So another question I put to the people that want to start and want to continue in this sporting activity is, really, do you have time for your dog? There's a huge list of time-consuming activity if you want to put your dog in a competition, or even if you just want to have a running dog with harness. First of all, of course, you have to have the time to find and choose the right one. It's not always easy to find right dog for you. So remember that you don't have to start running, and not even start running in a competition with a dog that you don't know, that you ever found in at the last minute. So take your time to find and choose the right dog. Take your time to let him grow, because a young dog, we will see later, a young dog can maybe have the desire to run, can have the desire to put himself in a competition, in a running activity. But if you let him run too early, if you maybe push him into a too um, early run, you will have a huge problem for the future of this dog. Then you have to take your time to teach the basic education. Of course, a dog has to be able to stop doing things that are not good. He has to be able to come when you call him back. So all the basic education are very important, not only for a dog that lives on a sofa, but also and especially for dogs that are used in sport, in every kind of sport. Then, of course, you have to take time to teach the orders of that specific sport. So you will need time to teach your dog how to turn, how to stop, how to speed up, or how to slow down. And this takes time. So some dog seems to be very intelligent, very fast in learning. Some other maybe are better dog, but are a little bit slower in learning. So take time for this. Another time you need, it will be time to train, of course. You will need to train many days in a week, maybe, or even few days in a week, but it's always a time consuming activity. And also taking time for rest. Rest is a part of training, because if you don't let the dog rest, as in humans, all the training you have done will not be made, will not give you the result you are willing to have. And take time for play and have fun together, because running for dog, as we said initially, is a fun activity. Time to train yourself. You have to be fit to run after a dog, or even to push a sled during winter season. So take your train time and train even without the dog. You have to, of course, you are in a competition with your dog, but as you train your dog, you also will have to make a specific training session for yourself. Time to find the right food. As we said, having the proper amount of energy, having the proper amount of proteins is very important. And usually is not the first kind of food you find in the supermarket that is good for a running dog, for a sporting dog. So you have to find the solution for a dog that will need sometime a lot of energy, sometime lower energy when they are in the resting period, but take time to find the right food. And of course, take time to go to the vet. Maybe it's just the initial check, the pre-race check, the time for prophylaxis as a vaccine, and treatment for parasites. And of course, you will need time in case of injuries to let the dog recover from injuries. And again, take time for house cleaning. It's very important to keep the environment where the dog lives very clean. So scoop the poop, and especially when you have many dogs, when you have a team, will be time consuming. And not also house cleaning, but also house organizing, let's say, because remember that especially if you have many dogs, even the time to put on the harness and to put on and off the booties will be a time consuming activity. So remember that if you want to run with a team, you will have to have a lot of time to do also the organizing of your team. And of course, you will need time when your dog is going older and older, and they will not be able anymore to run. You cannot be able to force a dog to run when he's old, when he doesn't have any more of the the capacity, or the athletic capacity, or when he is maybe old and have some arthritis situation, so time for retiring. And it's very sad to say, but you will have also time for processing the morning, because of course every living subject has a moment when he leaves our world, and you will have you will need the time to processing this sad situation. So doing sport with a dog in harness, it's not really for everybody. It's not really for every dog, I would say. Of course, it's nice to see dog of a breed that are not typical of this activity. It's nice to see them running, but it's very difficult to think that this kind of dog will enjoy this activity. If the dog was born to make maybe different activity, it will not be happy to run and just make the sled dog in the winter or what else. And so remember that it's not only about you having fun or reaching your targets, but it's a mix of building correct education and relationship with your dog. It's a mix of having a healthy dog that can be fun together with you, and finding time, as we said, to obtain this kind of goals. Uh, Again, when I talk with people in this world, three question that usually they put me is, when do I have to start with my young dog, or what I have to train and how I have to train, and when I have to train. So let's see one answer at a time. When to start is very important. As we said, having a young dog is very nice, is very rewarding, but you have to let him grow before starting a real sport activity, 100% fully into race. What is very important is that a young dog has to grow mentally and behaviorally, so let him have his own time. It's like having a young baby or a young guy that need to mature, to have a mental better attitude, and it's not just a few days or few weeks. Many of these dogs will need really many months to be fully grown on the mental side. And I say that if you stress them, running them too early, is possible that maybe they will give you good results initially, but probably they will have a shorter sporting career. So it's not only a physical point of view, it's also a mental point of view. Wait for the dog to grow before starting 100% sport activity. Of course, you will have to introduce him to this kind of sport, to do it little by little, but not doing it in a sudden way. And then the other part is the physical growth. Of course, the nervous system has to grow, because like a baby is not able to not to pee or to make feces, is not able to control, because he is not able on the nervous point of view. The same thing will be for the dog, and it's not only about pee and poo, but it's also about the ability to coordinate. So the nervous system is very important also to give the good muscle activity, and the nervous system needs time to mature. And the same thing is for the locomotor system. So muscle and tendons, joints and ligaments, bones and cartilage growth plates. All these things need time to be mature, to be able to afford a sporting activity. What I would like to stress is about growth plate. Grow plate is very important. It's the place where the bone grown, and depending on many factors, this part will be thick, and then will ossificate and then so on until the end of the growing period. And at the end, the grown plate will be very solid, almost as good as a bone, and resistant as a bone. On the puppy, the opposite, the grown plate are very fragile, are very soft. So putting too much mechanical stress on this part of the bone can be very dangerous for a puppy. Let's say that usually the grown plates can close in different periods, and it's a very extended period from 4 to 18 months of age, and depends on which grown plates we are talking about. So the anatomical region depends on the breed and the size of the dog. Usually the bigger dogs have slower closing of the grown plates. So having a dog that you wanna put in activity, remember that the big dog, the heavier dog will have some problem if you put them too early in activity, can have a problem with grown plates. And of course, also neutering and spaying a dog can put the closure later compared to a dog which is intact. So keep in mind that you cannot run 100% dog until the plates are closed. This is the reason why some rules in many federation and many club, some rules have, this rules is about the age of a dog that can run, and this dog cannot run at least until 12, 16 or 18 months of age, depending on the kind of activity, depending on the kind of size of a dog. As I said, the average bone closure can different in month, differing from different joints. For example, the shoulder can close at from 9 to 15 months of age, while the finger grown plates can close at 6 to 9 months of age. And I say that one of the latest closing time is that one of if we take a skeleton of a dog, of a young dog, we will see that the knee is one of the latest time in as one of the latest time in closing. Of course, you cannot know if you don't do an X-ray, so your vet will be able to help you to understand if the dog has all the grown plate closed. And the knee can be very interesting because there is a part of the knee which is near the tibial crest, where the patellar ligament has the insertion, which is usually very late in closing. And this part of a cartilage of grown plate, as you can see in X-ray, is very easy to be seen. You see that a little part of bone is not attached to the rest of a tibia. But what happens if you run your dog too hard, or maybe you are not able to call him back and stop him from playing too hard, or maybe running on a surface which is not very good for him? What can happen is this kind of thing. As you can see, the part of the tibial crest is detached, has been pulled upward by the patellar ligament, and the only way to correct this, of course, is through surgery, and probably this dog will have a huge problem in running again. So be aware about the time of closing grown plate that your vet can teach you and can help you in understanding. When to start again, I know a very good veterinarian who is Chris Zink from US. She is very good in sport activity for dog. she herself had many dog winning championship in many different sports, and she prepared this kind of table with what is, let's say, allowed or what is suggested for dog depending on the age of the dog. Here on the bottom is the link where you can find this poster. And in general, exercise for the young dog, as well as the adult, can be broken in different categories and in different age. So you can do maybe flexibility at a certain age, balance and proprioception at another age. You can do activity that can give more strong core muscle or front and rear leg muscle at another age, and so on for skilled training depending on the kind of sport you're doing, and finally also the endurance. So all this different activity, all these different exercises has to be introduced to the young dog in a different moment. And Chris Zink wrote this things that is creating the right balance among those activities is essential. Doing too little exercise has a long-lasting effects on critical body parts like cartilage and the ligaments. Think of cruciate ligament and cruciate injuries. If you have a dog that has not been prepared to do activity, his ligaments will be not so good, will not be so strong, and injuries will come out. So at the same time, doing too much has also long-term detrimental effects on cartilage, bones, and tendons. And we have seen that especially ground plates are the most delicate part in doing too much exercise for a young dog. Is this clear for everybody?
Yeah, good.
Or maybe, oh, I didn't hear anything. Maybe you fall asleep, no?
No, we're all on mute, listening intently.
Okay, and what to train? Training is the way to build up, as we say, the flexibility, balance, core, and front and rear leg strength, technical skills, endurance, speed, and compliance and connection. Remember that compliance and connection with your dog is very important when you want to have this kind of activity. And actually, I have to say two things, one about speed and one about the connection. Connection with the dog can be very important, especially when you are tired, when your dog are tired, when the weather situation is terrible. Maybe let's think about a storm and you cannot see the trail, and sometimes you cannot even see the trail in the snow and the dog in front of your team. But if you have a good mental connection with your dog, I have the experience of seeing teams arriving on the finish line or at the checkpoint in long distance, even when the weather was so terrible that I could have said, oh, they are losing their trail. No, the dog connected with the musher have been able to bring the team to the finish line. So mental connection is very important. And I can even say that sometime in sports where men and women run together, like in long distance sled dog race, many times is women that have a better connection with their own team, and especially with a leader in the team. And the other thing I want to say is the speed. I put a question mark on build-up speed. I can say that probably speed is not so trainable as endurance. And this goes back to the kind of muscle fibers you have. Because red fibers, the fiber that is very important in running long, burning fat, and burning oxygen, these kind of red fibers can be trained and and the performance of these fibers can be improved with training. Speed is much more probably a genetic point, a transmissible point from ancestor from father and mother to the puppy. So usually a dog that is very good in a short competition will give a litter that is very good again in short competition, sprint competition. On the opposite, putting this sprint dog in long distance can be very difficult sometimes. Not all of them are able to support the team for long distance if their own nature is to be fast. So speed is not so trainable sometimes. And this is the same as in human. Think of a sprinter, the 100-dash sprint distance athletes will never be able to run a good time in marathon because their muscle are not the kind of muscle that are good for long distance. And on the opposite, a marathon runner, ultra marathon runner, will not be so fast, even if he try to train and train in fast activity, he will never be so fast as the world champion in 100 meter, of course.
It's interesting from the human. Verity, do you want to talk?
I was about to go in there before you did, but you beat me to it. We were talking about Mo Farah fairly recently, Kusher and I, because he's gone from a track, so 10,000 meter runner on the track, to then training for a marathon training, and then he's tried to go back to track and he's just not performing like he was. So he has made that change on those intermediate muscle fibers that we were talking about earlier. And I would love to know how long it takes for a dog to make that change for those intermediate muscle fibers, because obviously there's the genetic makeup will predispose them to be better at faster or slow or longer distances. But if you were going to try and make that change on those intermediate muscles with a dog, how long would it take if you were very specific with their training, roughly?
Oh, I don't have any real data about it, but I can say that probably it will take many, many months to build up, or better to change the destination of those intermediate fibers. It's not a matter of week.
No, yeah, I mean, from the human perspective, I mean, it can take years to make that full adaptation. And
exactly.
When we were talking about Mo Farah, he has
exactly, but consider also that a dog doesn't have a running career as long as a human usually.
Yeah.
Usually they have a shorter, maybe 5, 8 years of good sporting activity. So the time a human needs can be probably compared to a shorter time for dogs, but not so short, however, not a few weeks, I would say.
No, so it's quite important then to be very specific with their training straight away, rather than changing between distances based on that time frame. Would you say?
Oh, sorry, say it again.
That you should be quite specific about what you want you and your dog to do from when you start training them. It's not a good idea to be going between long distance and fast short distances.
Exactly. At least you can do it, but you will never achieve the same results, and probably also the dog will not be so happy about the different kind of activity he has to do. Yeah. So if, in my opinion, if a dog was born to long distance or to run long distance, that's the activity he most likes, and he will be most able to express himself and achieving best results. And on the opposite, the sprint dog that was born as a sprint dog will never be happy to run as long distance. And consider also another point that usually in a team is the slowest dog that gives the final speed. So having a dog which is fast only for a few kilometers, and then it doesn't have the muscle and the activity to keep it on running fast for longer, it will slow down all the team. I mean, the average speed of a long distance team is for sure better than an average speed of a fast dog running in long distance. I don't know if I expressed myself correctly.
No, you did. That was perfect. Thank you, Sergio. It's something Kusha and I have been discussing a lot recently, so it's great to have your point of view on it. Thank you.
And okay, what the second point is how to train. Remember that you have to follow a schedule. You have to have your own method. And I cannot tell you which is the best method because every dog is different, every team is different. But the most important part, in my opinion, is to put some fantasy in it. I mean, when you have a schedule, don't do all the day the same things day long and repeating all the same things every time. The dog will be bored about it. And even running on the same track, same trail, always the same direction will really kill your dog in his enthusiasm for running. So be very creative when you have to decide for a training schedule. And so the point is training different ways. Sometimes just walking, playing, swimming, sometimes running long and running fast. Even if you have a sprint dog or a long distance or dog, some time you have to make them the experience of it, just to put some fantasy in the training schedule. And of course, running free is very important, and it's very important also for the dog to have a fun, to have a better activity in finding his way to move, on different surface. So what is called the fall track in human activity is very good for dogs too. Sometimes up and down, fast and slow. So keep a fantasy in the way you train. And also remember that you have to build up the strength and the core muscle and the muscle in the legs. So running uphill and running with weight loads can help you in this part of the training. And as I said, also alternate high and low intensity. Maybe one day you will run just a short session and 2 days after a long one. Run for fast and slow session. Remember to always put rest between training session, because rest is the way to let the body recover and let the body be ready at a higher level for the next day. So work and rest always have it in your routine. Do not run 5 days and only 1 day of rest. And even at the opposite, do not rest 6 days and then on the Sunday just work and run as a crazy, because that will be the best way to find, to have a problem with a joint, with a muscle. So remember to have an alternate work and rest program. And of course, never train. When they ask me when to train, I would say never train when the dog is not fit or with low body condition or even of high body condition. If you have a dog which is too fat, you have to make him losing some weight before starting running. And low hydration condition. Never train if the dog has any kind of health problems. And in my experience, the health problems in this activity are mainly orthopedics, of course. So maybe I would say that wrist and the shoulder are the two joints that are more stressed in running activity for dogs. Maybe I would say that hip problems, which is very frequent in other kind of dogs, hip problems are not so easy to be seen in Sleddog and dryland. I would say that maybe the iliopsoas, the dorsal muscle, which is near the spine in the back, is very easy to be stressed and to have a problem. This is a muscle together with the biceps and triceps in the front leg. These are the muscles that are more stressed. As well, some health problems comes from, of course, from dehydration, comes from gastrointestinal problems are very easy to be seen. There is many dogs, especially in long distance, that suffer from gastric problems, even from gastric ulcers. We have, in the past, I took part to a study about gastric ulcers, and we have seen that even in the top team, the two top team that we checked with gastroscopy, even these dogs that were running very good, that were giving very good results, had some problem with gastritis and even gastric also. So have a good feeding is food. Good food is not always the solution. Sometimes also the stress of this activity can be dangerous for the gastric problem of these dogs. And never train, never run if the dog show that he doesn't want to run, or if he has not fully recovered from an injury. And remember also that some environment situation can be very dangerous, so never train with air and humidity, high temperature and humidity, high values. And of course, during the scheduled resting period, you don't have to try to train and try to break your off racing season period. As I say, the temperature and humidity are very important. Here I put a table that was made by the Australian Sleddog Sport Association, which is interesting because it's divided. Of course, temperature and humidity is much more important for dry land. In snow racing, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe too cold can be a problem, but if the dog are Nordic dog, or at least some blood is a Nordic blood, the cold, the very cold, will be better managed by the dog compared to the high temperature and high humidity. I was telling you that this table is very interesting because you can see there is not only the temperature that can give a problem to your dog, but also the humidity, the relative humidity. Because even if the dog is not has not the possibility to sweat, you say, sweat. Is this correct in English?
It is, yeah, sweat.
Okay, sweat. Okay, if the dog has not the possibility to sweat because it doesn't have any, like a human has on the skin, this glands. For the dog, it's very important to have the possibility to exchange humidity from the inner part of the body through the lungs and the trachea with the outer environment. I mean, if the humidity outside in the environment is very high, for the dog will be more difficult to lose temperature. Of course, you know that when the dog runs, his temperature goes high and high. Consider that even running in a very short distance, think of a greyhound. A greyhound running maybe 400 meters, 600 meters, can see his own inner temperature grow up to 43, even 43 degrees, which is almost 4 degrees higher than normal in just 20-second run, 30-second run. So a dog doing muscle activity has very high temperature inside, and the only way to cool down is to put out hot air, and air is better, and the temperature is better lowered if the humidity is not high. So in this table, you see that the red square are the temperature and humidity which are not good at all for running dog. And in Australia, they divided the point in the 3 classes. So scooter or rig do not run beyond the first line of red squares. Then bike joring do not have to run beyond the second and the third square lines, red square lines. And finally, not even Canicross can run beyond that point. And this is not so easy to understand, because usually at races you measure only the air temperature, but it should be nice to have in some way an evaluation also of humidity, to be sure that our dogs are safe to run at a certain temperature. Okay, this was my last slide, and I hope everything was clear for you. I don't know if you have some question now.
I'm just checking to see if there's any questions on though. That was Sergio, that was fascinating. It really was. I find it really interesting looking at the temperature slides, actually, of the temperatures that they say that we can run Canicross is quite high.
Oh yes, it is. Actually, it is.
You think that's appropriate?
Of course, it depends also on the distance you're running, the kind of activity you're running, and of course, if the temperature and the humidity are high, you have to shorten the distance you're going to run. For sure, IFSS, for example, or other federation has a different level depending on the temperature we have in Europe. And but an interesting point of view is the fact that year after year, because probably of some weather changing all over the world, the temperature will be higher, and we will have to put much more interest in this aspect of organizing and running dogs, organizing races and running dogs. I think we will have to lower the temperature.
I think it's a challenge we're all going to face. There was some very interesting research which was done by some British vets at an event which they continually took temperatures throughout the event. And I think to summarize it, it was basically dark-coated male dogs with a larger muscle mass were the dogs which were shown a much higher percentage of body temperature.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was really an interesting research. I read a lot of it.
Yeah. Sergio, it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I know there's there might be some questions.
Wait, I don't know if you still can look at me, or if you're still looking at
we're still looking at your screen at the moment, but I can stop
the screen. So how do I put back my face on it?
I will see if I can do it from here.
Here, maybe.
There we go.
Here it is.
Sorted. There we go.
Okay.
Has anyone got a question? You wave at us if you've got a question you'd like to ask.
This is embarrassing.
Can't see any waving hands at me at the moment. But
No.
oh yeah, there's one. Kim, I'll just unmute you.
There we go, I'm on. Thanks very much. That was amazing, Sergio. I've actually got loads of questions, but I'll try and keep them down. You talked a lot about hydration. Now, obviously, you'd want to make sure that your dogs, I do mono and team sports, and I've been from other mushers have kind of taught me in the ways of baiting water to try and get the dogs to encourage them to drink before going on a run. We're talking more sprint island distances. But does that have any benefit, or does it just mean that my dog's going to need to pee more as we're going around the trail?
You mean having water before the start?
Yes, so encouraging by putting things in it that make it taste a little bit nicer, so they drink more than what they'd normally drink.
Yeah, for sure. Having a little bit of water and some protein, let's say some meat in it, sometimes can encourage the dog to drink. That's a very good trick, I would say. And but not all the dogs are the same. So some dogs just love running water, clear running water. Some other could drink even from a pool, dirty pool. I mean, it's very different from dog to dog. But usually, I would say that putting some a little bit of meat in the water is a good idea. And of course, it doesn't have to be too near to the starting moment. Let's say probably no more than half an hour before the start. And the same as is on the finish line. I don't like to see dog putting their mouth immediately in the water after the finish line. Actually, I even had a bad experience with a dog who had a gastric dilatation and a gastric volvulus. And we have been lucky because we were 5 vets on the finish line, and the dog just on the arriving drink a lot of water, and in half an hour the dog had a dilated stomach. So we bring the dog immediately to a clinic. But that was the real reason, was that the stomach was full of water because it was drinking too much and too fast. So little by little, small quantity, maybe wait 5-10 minutes, let him cool down a bit, and then start with a bit of water, not too cold, of course, even if the temperature is very high. Was this enough for you?
Brilliant. Very, very good. I have got another question, if I'm allowed.
Go for it, Kim. Go for it.
So I've got a puppy that's coming along, and I've gone through sort of monosports and then started to build a team. Now, as the puppy's sort of growing up, because I do lots of different disciplines, my consideration is then with the strain, obviously he's not going to do anything for some time, he's only 6 months, but would you, if his long-term goal is to be in a team, would my training be centered more about team harness sports, or is there more of a benefit to doing Canicross and bike jour where you've got the free running wheels as opposed to then dragging the weight of a rig or a scooter? Is there an evolution through the mono sports into taking him into team sports, or is it better to wait till he's old enough and just go into the discipline I want to compete in?
No, I would say that it's better to take the different disciplines, let him try, let him enjoy the different kind of activity, and of course put more emphasis on the technical part of what you want him to do and you to do. But until I would say until 6, 8, maybe even 10 months of age, let him try everything. It's just like a young man and young girl that are put in a sport, and they do only that kind of sport. They will be bored sooner or later. Maybe they will be world young champion, but later they will disappear, because doing always the same kind of things is really boring for them as it is for us. So don't force him in, and don't take him away from a different experience, let's say.
Thanks, Kim, for those great questions. Has anyone else got any other questions? Give us a wave if you have. No, think that's it then. Thank you so much. I mean, I've learned lots, and the growth plate diagram where you're showing how different parts of the body's growth plates change, it was really fascinating for me from a biomechanics point of view as well. So thank you so much. It's been great. Kushla, did you want to add anything?
I'm going to go out and buy some honey.
Is that for yourself or for the dog?
I'll share. It's fine. I'll share. But that was fascinating. Thank you so much. I love the really clear diagrams, and we would really love to have you back to chat about more things, Sergio. So we'll come up with some more. If anyone's got any suggestions as well that have been watching this, which we'd really like, certain things that perhaps you'd like Sergio to talk about. His wealth of experience of knowledge is just so enormous that pinpointing certain little bits down is quite tricky. So if you've got any ideas, please do let us know, because we would love to have you back. And thank you so much for giving up your Saturday evening. We can't thank you enough. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me to share what I know, and to have different sharing of knowledges. You know, it's always nice to. It's the only way to grow up in this kind of sport and in life, actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We've got so many people are waiting that I know that couldn't come and waiting for the recording. So we will get that to them as well. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us. It's been, thank you for giving up your Saturdays, and it's been a real thrill to meet you all. Thank you.
Okay, ciao.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.